Carter Hayes thought he had won. He looked at his wife across the mahogany table, threw a pen at her, and smirked as she signed away 5 years of marriage. He thought he was discarding a boring, unemployed housewife to climb the ladder at Sterling Global. He thought he was about to become the king of the corporate world. But Carter forgot one tiny detail. You don't bite the hand that feeds you. He didn't know that the useless woman sitting across from him wasn't just his wife. She was the one who signed his paychecks. She was the shadow owner of the very empire he worked for. And that divorce decree? It wasn't her defeat. It was his execution order. Rain lashed against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse apartment in downtown Chicago, blurring the city lights into streaks of jagged gold. Inside, the atmosphere was colder than the storm raging outside. Carter Hayes adjusted his silk tie in the hallway mirror, admiring the sharp cut of his jawline. He looked expensive. He smelled like imported leather and arrogance. He turned and walked into the living room, where Adeline sat quietly on the beige sofa, her hands folded in her lap. "It's time, Adeline," Carter said, his voice smooth but lacking any warmth. He tossed a thick manila envelope onto the coffee table. It landed with a heavy thud that seemed to echo in the silence. "My lawyer drew these up this morning. Irreconcilable differences. I'm being generous with the alimony, considering you haven't contributed a dime to this household in 3 years. Adeline didn't flinch. She looked at the envelope, then up at him. Her eyes were a calm, unsettling shade of grey. She wore a simple, oversized sweater and leggings, her hair tied back in a messy bun, the very image of the boring housewife Carter had been complaining about to his colleagues for months. "Generous," Adeline repeated, the word rolling off her tongue without inflection. "Is that what we're calling it, Carter?" "I'm giving you the apartment for 6 months," Carter scoffed, walking over to the wet bar to pour himself a scotch. He didn't offer her one. "And enough cash to get you back on your feet. Maybe you can finish that art degree you dropped out of. Or find a job. God knows you need a reality check." He took a sip, the amber liquid burning pleasantly. "Look, Adeline, don't make this hard. We've grown apart. I'm a regional director at Sterling Global now. I'm handling multi-million-dollar mergers. I need a partner who understands that world. Someone who fits the image. You're happier at home watching TV." Adeline reached for the envelope. She pulled out the documents, her eyes scanning the legal jargon. Plaintiff, Carter Hayes. Defendant, Adeline Hayes. "Who is she?" Adeline asked. She didn't sound jealous. She sounded curious, like a scientist observing a rat in a maze. Carter paused, the glass halfway to his mouth. He smirked. It was a nasty expression, one that twisted his handsome features into something predatory. "Isabella," he said, not bothering to hide it anymore. "Isabella Croft. She's the daughter of the VP of Operations. She's ambitious, Adeline. She's vital. She doesn't wear sweatpants to dinner." "Isabella Croft?" Adeline nodded slowly. "The VP's daughter. I see. So this is a career move as much as a romantic one." "It's called leveling up," Carter snapped, setting his glass down hard. "Something you wouldn't understand. Now sign the papers. I have a dinner reservation at the Kensington at 8. Adeline picked up the pen he had thrown earlier. She held it poised over the signature line. "Are you sure about this, Carter?" she asked, her voice dropping an octave. "Once I sign this, there's no going back. You are severing the tie completely." "Sign it," he commanded, checking his Rolex. "I'm done carrying dead weight." Adeline smiled. It wasn't a sad smile. It was a small, tight curvature of her lips that didn't reach her eyes. If Carter had been paying attention, If he had ever truly looked at his wife in the last 5 years, he would have seen the danger in that smile. He would have seen the shark beneath the surface. But he was looking at his reflection in the window. Adeline pressed the pen to the paper. The scratching sound was loud in the quiet room. She signed her name with a flourish, Adeline Sterling Hayes. "There," she said, closing the folder. "You're a free man, Carter." Carter snatched the folder up, checking the signature to ensure it was valid. He let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. "Good. I'll have my assistant pick up my things tomorrow. Don't wait up." He grabbed his coat and headed for the door, his mind already on the celebratory champagne he'd be popping with Isabella. He paused with his hand on the doorknob, looking back at Adeline one last time. She hadn't moved. She was just sitting there, staring at the rain. "Honestly, Adeline," he said, shaking his head, "I hope you find someone simple. Someone on your level. You were never cut out for the high life." The door clicked shut. The lock engaged. Adeline waited exactly 10 seconds. Then she stood up. The slouch in her shoulders vanished. Her posture straightened, transforming her silhouette instantly. She walked over to the window where Carter had just stood, watching his silver Porsche pull out of the garage below. She reached into the pocket of her oversized sweater and pulled out a phone. It wasn't her personal iPhone. It was a sleek, black satellite phone with biometric encryption. She pressed her thumb to the screen. It unlocked instantly. She dialed a single number. "Mr. Silas," she said, her voice crisp, authoritative, and terrifyingly cold. "Madam Sterling." The voice on the other end answered immediately. "We didn't expect a call tonight. Is everything all right?" "The divorce papers are signed," Adeline said, watching the tail lights of her ex-husband disappear into the Chicago night. "Carter Hayes is no longer protected by my name." "Understood, madam," Silas replied. "Shall I initiate the protocols?" "Not yet," Adeline said. "He thinks he's leveling up. He thinks he's securing the regional director position permanently. Let him enjoy his dinner at the Kensington." "But Silas—" "Yes, madam?" "Schedule an emergency board meeting for Sterling Global. Friday morning, 8 A West. M sharp. Mandatory attendance for all senior executives, including the regional directors." "And the agenda, madam?" Adeline turned away from the window, her eyes hardening into steel. "Restructuring," she whispered. "And pest control." The morning after the divorce papers were signed, Adeline did not spend the day crying into a tub of ice cream. At 6 a.m., a black town car with tinted windows idled in the alleyway behind her apartment building. Adeline exited through the service elevator, wearing a tailored charcoal suit that cost more than Carter's car. Her hair was no longer in a messy bun. It was blown out straight, sharp enough to cut glass. She wore large sunglasses to obscure her face. The driver, a massive man named Tobias, who had been her security detail for a decade, opened the door. "Good morning, Miss Sterling," he rumbled. "Morning, Tobias. Take me to the secondary office." Carter Hayes believed his wife was an orphan from Ohio with a small inheritance. That was the lie she had told him when they met 5 years ago in a coffee shop. Adeline wanted to be loved for herself, not for the billions attached to her surname. She wanted to know if a man could love Adeline the person, not Adeline the heiress of the Sterling conglomerate, a company that owned shipping lines, tech firms, real estate, and, ironically, the marketing firm Carter worked for. She had maintained the ruse perfectly. She used a shell bank account for their joint expenses. She played the role of the supportive, slightly aimless wife. She cooked dinner while mentally calculating quarterly earnings reports. She listened to Carter complain about upper management, knowing full well that she was the upper management he was terrified of. The car glided through the city, pulling up to a nondescript glass building in the financial district. This wasn't the Sterling Global headquarters. That was the gleaming tower 3 blocks away where Carter worked. This was the family office. The brain. Adeline swept into the lobby, bypassing security, who simply nodded with deep respect. She entered the private elevator and pressed the button for the top floor. When the doors opened, Silas was waiting. Silas was a man of indeterminate age, impeccably dressed in a 3-piece suit, holding an iPad. He was the only person at Sterling Global who knew the face of the owner. To the rest of the board, the owner was a ghost, a signature on a document, a voice on a scrambled conference call known only as the chairman. "The board has been notified," Silas said, falling into step beside her as she walked down the corridor. "Panic is already setting in. The stock dipped 0.15% on the rumor of a meeting, but we stabilized it with the announcement of the Asian market expansion." "Good," Adeline said, walking into her office. It was a fortress of solitude, minimalist, stark, and powerful. "What about Carter?" Silas projected a hologram onto the glass desk. It displayed Carter's employee profile, his recent emails, and his GPS location. "Mr. Hayes arrived at the office at 8:15 a.m. He has a meeting with HR scheduled for noon to update his marital status. He's also sent 3 emails to the VP of Operations, demanding an early review for the senior vice president role." Adeline laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "He's wasting no time. He thinks marrying the VP's daughter guarantees him the seat." "About that," Silas tapped the screen. "Isabella Croft. We've done a background check. She's unaware." Adeline paused, hanging her blazer on the back of her chair. "Unaware?" "She knows Carter is divorcing, but she doesn't know the specifics of his finances. She also has no idea who you are. She thinks she's snagged a rising star. However, she has been leaking internal memos to a competitor. Minor stuff, but enough to constitute a breach of contract." Adeline's eyes narrowed. "So, my husband left me for a corporate spy." "A low-level one, but yes," Silas confirmed. Adeline walked to the window. From here, she could see the Sterling Global Tower. Somewhere on the 40th floor, Carter was sitting in his glass-walled office, feet on the desk, feeling like a king. "Does he know who the chairman is yet?" Adeline asked. "No one does, madam. The legend of the recluse billionaire protects you. Carter believes the company is run by the board of directors. He thinks the Sterling name is just legacy branding from a dead family." "Perfect," Adeline murmured. She sat down at her desk and opened the secure server. She pulled up Carter's file. She watched the performance metrics. Carter was, objectively, a mediocre executive. He stole credit from his juniors. He inflated his numbers. He was charming, yes, and good at sales. But he was a cancer in the corporate culture. Adeline had kept him employed and promoted him twice, solely to keep peace at home. She had separated church and state, so to speak, but now the church had burned down. "Silas," Adeline said, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. "Freeze his corporate credit card, the Platinum Infinite one." "On what grounds?" "Irregular spending," Adeline said flatly. "And flag his expense reports from the last 6 months. I recall he took a business trip to Miami in November. I was at home with the flu. I'm guessing Isabella was the client he was entertaining." "I'll have the audit team pull the receipts immediately," Silas said, a hint of a smile touching his lips. "Shall we also cancel his reservation for the company jet?" He requested the jet? "For this weekend, a trip to Cabo, presumably to celebrate his freedom." Adeline leaned back. "Don't cancel it. Let him board. Let him sit in the leather seat. Let him drink the champagne. And then have the pilot inform him that the flight plan has been revoked by the owner due to Budget cuts. Cruel, Silas noted. Educational, Adeline corrected. She swiveled her chair around. I want everything ready for Friday, Silas. I want the boardroom set up. I want the projection screens ready. And I want you to buy out the lease on Carter's new apartment. Silas blinked. The penthouse he just put a deposit on. Yes. Buy the whole building if you have to. I want him to realize that everywhere he turns, the walls are closing in. He wanted a world where power matters. I'm going to show him what power actually looks like. Adeline looked at the divorce papers she had brought with her. She picked up a lighter from her desk and flicked the flame. She held the corner of the envelope until it caught fire, watching the paper curl and blacken. He signed a divorce, she whispered to the flame. I'm signing his resignation. Carter Hayes walked into the Sterling Global headquarters on Wednesday morning with the stride of a man who had conquered the world. He high-fived the security guard, who looked confused, and winked at the receptionist. In the elevator, he checked his reflection in the polished brass doors. No more Adeline, no more dragging anchor. He was free. When he reached the 40th floor, Isabella Croft was waiting for him. She was leaning against his doorframe, wearing a crimson dress that skirted the line of corporate appropriateness. She held 2 coffees. Latte for the bachelor, she purred, handing him the cup. I heard the good news. Papers are signed. Signed, sealed, and delivered. Carter grinned, taking a sip. She didn't even fight for the house, just took the payout and folded. Pathetic, really. Isabella rolled her eyes. Some women just aren't built for the climb, Carter. My father mentioned you this morning, by the way. He said the chairman has called a mandatory meeting for Friday. He thinks big changes are coming. Carter's heart leapt. Changes? Like leadership changes? Exactly, Isabella whispered, stepping closer. Daddy thinks the current SVP is being moved to the London branch. That seat is going to be empty, Carter. And with your numbers this quarter, it's mine, Carter finished, his eyes gleaming. This is it, Bella. Everything is falling into place. The euphoria lasted exactly until 12:30 p.m. Carter decided to take Isabella to Le Monde, a French bistro 3 blocks away, known for its $50 appetizers and exclusivity. It was the kind of place you went to be seen. They ordered champagne, oysters, and the lobster thermidor. Carter spent the entire lunch talking about his vision for the department, how he would fire the older staff and bring in fresh blood. Isabella nodded, texting under the table, clearly bored but sticking around for the potential power couple status. When the check came, it was for $600. A drop in the bucket for a future senior vice president. Carter pulled out his Sterling Global Corporate Platinum card, the heavy metal one that clattered satisfyingly on the tray. He smiled at the waiter. Keep the change. 5 minutes later, the waiter returned. He wasn't smiling. He was holding the card with 2 fingers as if it were contaminated. Sir, the waiter said, his voice loud enough that the table next to them turned to look. The card was declined. Carter scoffed, snatching it back. Impossible. That has a $50,000 limit. Try it again. You probably chipped the reader. I tried it 3 times, sir, the waiter said, his politeness straining. The machine gives a specific error code. Code 99. Owner authorization revoked. Owner authorization? Carter frowned. I am the authorized user. Maybe you should try a personal card, Isabella suggested, her voice tight. She hated embarrassment. Carter felt a bead of sweat trickle down his back. He pulled out his personal visa. He handed it over. 3 minutes later, the waiter returned. Declined, sir. Insufficient funds. Carter froze. He had transferred 20 grand into Adeline's account that morning as the first alimony installment. He had forgotten to move money from his savings to his checking to cover the gap. "Is there a problem, Carter?" Isabella asked, crossing her arms. The admiration in her eyes was rapidly replaced by annoyance. "Just a banking glitch," Carter lied, his face burning red. "Adeline probably messed something up with the joint accounts before she left. She's spiteful like that." Isabella sighed, opening her designer purse. She pulled out her own card. "I'll get it. But you owe me. I don't date men who can't pay for lobster." Carter felt small. He felt shrinking. "I'll fix this," he promised, standing up too quickly and knocking his water glass over. "I'll call the bank right now." He stepped outside, dialing the VIP line for the corporate card. "Sterling Global Financial Services. This is Mark." "Mark, this is Carter Hayes. My card just declined. Fix it. Now." There was a tapping of keys on the other end. Then silence. "Mr. Hayes," Mark said, his voice changing from helpful to professional ice. "I see the flag here. Your account has been frozen pending an internal audit regarding the Miami expenses." "What?" Carter nearly dropped the phone. "That was 6 months ago. Who authorized an audit now?" "The order came from the top, sir," Mark said. "Direct from the executive office. You'll need to speak to them." Carter hung up, staring at the phone. The executive office? The chairman? Why would the mysterious owner care about a few grand in Miami? Unless Isabella. She had been with him in Miami. If they found out he used company funds to fly a mistress out. He looked through the window of the restaurant. Isabella was signing the check, looking impatient. "It's a mistake," Carter muttered to himself, straightening his tie. "Just a glitch. I'll smooth it over on Friday. Once I get that promotion, none of this will matter." He didn't notice the black town car parked across the street. He didn't see the tinted window roll down an inch or the grey eyes watching him panic. Inside the car, Adeline Sterling watched her ex-husband sweat. "Phase 1 complete," she said into her phone. "Silas, cut his access to the company servers tonight at midnight. I want him walking into that meeting blind." Thursday was a nightmare of silence. Carter couldn't log into his email. The IT department claimed it was a system-wide update, but Carter noticed everyone else was working fine. He spent the day pacing in his office, unable to do anything, terrified that the audit was real. But by Thursday evening, his natural arrogance had reasserted itself. "They can't fire me," he reasoned. "I'm the top earner in the Midwest region. This is probably just a security check before the promotion. They lock you out to scrub the old permissions before giving you the master keys." Yes, that had to be it. To celebrate his imminent victory and to apologize for the lunch fiasco, he decided to buy Isabella a gift. He went to Vanderbilt's, the city's most exclusive jeweler. The store was quiet, smelling of lilies and money. Carter walked to the counter, pointing at a diamond tennis bracelet. "Let me see that one," he demanded of the saleswoman. "The 5-carat. "Excellent choice, sir," the woman said. "That is 18,000. Carter hesitated. His cards were still frozen, but he had a stash of cash in his wall safe at home, and he had brought a stack of bills today, determined to regain his dignity. "I'll take it," he said. As the woman went to box it up, the chime above the door rang. Carter turned casually and froze. Adeline walked in, but it wasn't the Adeline he knew. The woman who walked through the door wasn't wearing leggings or an oversized sweater. She was wearing a midnight blue evening gown that hugged every curve, draped under a white trench coat that looked like it belonged on a runway in Milan. She wore heels that added 3 inches to her height, and her hair was loose, cascading in soft waves. She didn't look like a housewife. She looked like a queen. Behind her, Tobias, the massive bodyguard, stood by the door, arms crossed. Adeline walked straight past Carter as if he were a mannequin. She approached the manager, a stout man named Mr. Beaumont, who rushed out from the back room as if the Pope had just arrived. "Miss Sterling," Mr. Beaumont gasped. "We didn't expect you until tomorrow." "Miss Sterling?" Carter frowned. Why was she using her maiden name? And why did the manager know her? "I was in the neighborhood, Henry," Adeline said, her voice smooth and commanding. "Is the commission ready?" Yes, of course," Mr. Beaumont stammered. He unlocked a special display case in the back wall, the one usually reserved for museum pieces. He pulled out a necklace. It wasn't just jewelry, it was a constellation of sapphires and diamonds that looked heavy enough to sink a ship. Carter stared. That necklace had to be worth millions. He couldn't help himself. He stepped forward. "Adeline?" She turned slowly. Her expression was mild, polite, and completely unrecognizable. It was the face of a stranger. "Hello, Carter," she said. What are you doing here?" He gestured to the necklace. "You can't afford that. Did you spend the entire divorce settlement in one day? Are you insane?" Mr. Beaumont looked at Carter with horror. "Sir, please lower your voice." "No, tell her." Carter laughed, a nervous, jagged sound. "Adeline, look at me. You're trying to look rich to make me jealous? It's sad. You're going to be broke in a month." Adeline looked at him. She didn't get angry. She didn't defend herself. She just looked at him with a mixture of pity and amusement. "I'm not buying it with the settlement, Carter," she said softly. "Then how?" he sneered. "Did you find a sugar daddy already? Is that it?" Adeline stepped closer to him. She smelled of rain and expensive perfume, a scent he had never noticed on her before, because she had never worn it for him. "You have a big day tomorrow, don't you?" she asked, ignoring his insult. "The Friday meeting." Carter blinked, thrown off balance. "How do you know about that?" "I hear things," she said. She reached out and adjusted his tie. Her touch was cold. "Make sure you wear your best suit, Carter. Presentation is everything." She turned back to Mr. Beaumont. "I'll take it, Henry. Put it on the family account and send it to the vault, not the apartment." "Of course, Ms. Sterling." Adeline turned to leave. As she passed Carter, she paused one last time. "Oh, and Carter, that tennis bracelet is cubic zirconia. Isabella will notice." She walked out into the night, Tobias falling in step behind her. Carter stood there, stunned. He looked at the saleswoman. "Is it?" The saleswoman looked uncomfortable. "It is. A high-quality synthetic, sir. The diamond version is in the other case." Carter's face burned purple. He slammed the cash on the counter. "Give me the real one. I don't care how much it is." He walked out of the store 10 minutes later, clutching the velvet box, his heart racing. Adeline was bluffing. She had to be. She was just trying to get inside his head before his big moment. "Ms. Sterling." The name echoed in his mind. He shook it off. It didn't matter. Tomorrow was Friday. Tomorrow he would walk into that boardroom, take his seat at the head of the table, and finally get the respect he deserved. He went home, laid out his best navy suit, and practiced his acceptance speech in the mirror. He slept soundly, dreaming of corner offices and private jets. He had no idea that across town, in the penthouse of the Sterling Tower, Adeline was sitting at the head of a very long table, reviewing a PowerPoint presentation. The first slide read, "Agenda Item 1, the termination of Carter Hayes." The second slide was a photo of Carter signing the divorce papers. "Are the lawyers ready?" Adeline asked the empty room. From the shadows, Silas stepped forward. "The legal team is assembled, madam, and we have the security footage from Miami." "Good," Adeline said, closing the laptop. "Let's go to work." Friday morning arrived with a sky the color of bruised iron. The air inside the Sterling Global skyscraper was pressurized, heavy with the scent of ozone and anxiety. Carter Hayes stepped off the elevator on the 50th floor, the executive level. He had only been up here twice in 5 years, once for his initial interview, and once for the Christmas party, where he had gotten too drunk and tried to network with the janitorial staff, thinking they were investors. Today, he wore his navy suit, a crisp white shirt, and the confidence of a man walking to his coronation. He had ignored the fact that his badge didn't work at the turnstile downstairs. He simply tailgated an intern and chalked it up to the IT glitch from yesterday. The boardroom was a cavern of glass and polished oak, suspended in the sky, with a panoramic view of the city. When Carter entered, the room was already full. 12 people sat around the massive oval table. These were the titans of the industry, men and women whose signatures moved markets. There was Arthur Graves, the CFO, a man who allegedly smiled once in 1998. There was Lydia Cross, the Director of Global Operations, and there was William Croft, the VP and Isabella's father. Isabella was there too, sitting in a chair against the wall reserved for junior executives. She looked pale. She gave Carter a quick, nervous glance, but didn't smile. Carter scanned the table. There was only one empty seat, the high-backed leather chair at the very head of the table. The chairman's seat. My seat, Carter thought, his pulse hammering a rhythm of pure adrenaline. They left it open for me. He strode forward, nodding to the board members. Good morning, everyone. Arthur, Lydia. William, good to see you. The room was deadly silent. No one returned his greeting. They just watched him, their expressions unreadable, like statues in a museum. Carter felt a prickle of unease, but shoved it down. This was a test. They were testing his resolve. He walked to the head of the table. He placed his leather portfolio on the mahogany surface. He reached for the back of the chairman's chair. Don't, a voice cut through the silence. It was William Croft. He wasn't looking at Carter. He was looking at his hands, which were clasped tightly in front of him. Do not sit there, Carter. Carter paused, his hand hovering over the leather. He laughed nervously. Come on, Bill. We all know why we're here. The restructuring. I'm ready to step up. You are here, Arthur Graves said, his voice like grinding stones, because your attendance was mandatory. Take your assigned seat. He pointed to a small, metal folding chair set up in the corner of the room, far away from the table, next to the wastebasket. Carter blinked. I don't understand. Is this a hazing ritual? Sit down, Graves barked. Humiliated, face burning, Carter walked to the metal chair and sat. The metal was cold against his back. He felt like a schoolboy in detention. Just wait, he told himself. When the chairman arrives, they'll clear this up. I'm the top earner. They need me. The double doors at the far end of the room opened. Silas walked in first. He stood by the door, rigid and formal. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, Silas announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. Please rise for the chairman and majority shareholder of Sterling Global. The 12 executives stood up in unison. The sound of chairs scraping back was deafening. Even William Croft stood up, looking terrified. Carter stood up too, craning his neck to see the mysterious billionaire who held his fate in their hands. And then she walked in. She wore a suit of white silk that seemed to glow in the ambient light. Her heels clicked rhythmically on the marble floor. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, elegant ponytail that highlighted the sharp angles of her face. Carter's brain short-circuited. He blinked. He rubbed his eyes. It was Adeline, but it wasn't. It couldn't be. Adeline was at home. No, she was at a hotel, crying over her failed marriage. Adeline was the woman who clipped coupons for laundry detergent. Adeline was the woman he had discarded like an old shoe. This woman radiated power. She walked with the predatory grace of a panther entering a cage of rabbits. She walked past the stunned executives. She didn't look at them. She walked straight to the head of the table. She stood behind the leather chair, the one Carter had tried to sit in. She placed her hands on the back of it, her knuckles white diamonds against the black leather. Finally, she looked up, her grey eyes locked onto Carter across the room. "Please be seated," she said. The voice was Adeline's, but the tone was the chairman's. The board sat. Carter remained standing, his mouth hanging open. "Adeline," he whispered, the sound strangled. "What? What are you doing? How did you get in here? Did you bring coffee?" A few board members gasped. William Croft closed his eyes as if in physical pain. Adeline didn't blink. "Mr. Hayes, you are addressing the chair. If you speak out of turn again, I will have you removed by security before the meeting begins." "The chair?" Carter stepped forward, his confusion morphing into anger. "Is this a joke? Are you sleeping with the owner, Adeline? Is that it? You think because you're banging the boss you can crash a board meeting?" He turned to the board, his arms wide. "This is my ex-wife. She's mentally unstable. She's clearly having a breakdown because of the divorce. Someone call security." "I am the security," a deep voice rumbled. Tobias stepped out from the shadows near the door, his arms crossed, looking like a mountain in a suit. "And she is the owner," Arthur Graves said, looking at Carter with pure disgust. "Mr. Hayes, you are embarrassing yourself. This is Ms. Adeline Sterling, the granddaughter of the founder. She owns 51% of the voting stock. She is Sterling Global." The world stopped spinning for Carter Hayes. Sterling. Adeline Sterling. He replayed the last 5 years in his head. The way she never talked about her family. The way she managed their budget with computer-like precision. The way she smirked when he bragged about his small bonuses. He had been married to the empire, and he had divorced it for a woman who was currently shaking in the corner. Adeline sat down. She opened a slim black folder. "Now that the clown has performed his opening act," she said coolly, "let us proceed to business. Item 1. The immediate termination of the regional director for the Midwest." The silence in the room was so profound that the hum of the air conditioning sounded like a jet engine. Carter sank into his metal chair. His legs had lost the ability to support him. He looked at Isabella. She was staring at the floor, refusing to make eye contact. "Termination," Carter squeaked. "On what grounds? My numbers are up 15% this quarter." Adeline didn't even look at him. She pressed a button on the console embedded in the table. A massive screen descended from the ceiling. "Silas," she said, "please present Exhibit A." The screen flickered to life. It displayed a complex spreadsheet. "Mr. Hayes claims a 15% growth," Adeline said, addressing the board like a professor teaching a class. "However, upon closer inspection by my personal audit team over the last 48 hours, we discovered a pattern." She used a laser pointer to circle several red columns. "He has been shifting projected earnings from the next quarter into the current one to inflate his bonuses. It's a classic Ponzi scheme of data. Technically illegal? Borderline. Against company policy? Absolutely. But that is the least of his worries." The slide changed. The room gasped. It was a photo, a high-resolution, time-stamped photo, taken from a security camera in a hotel lobby in Miami. It showed Carter Hayes wearing a swimsuit and a bathrobe with his arm around Isabella Croft. They were holding tropical drinks. November 14th, Adeline narrated, her voice devoid of emotion. Mr. Hayes submitted an expense report for $4,500 for client entertainment and conference lodging. As you can see, the only client he was entertaining was Ms. Croft, a junior employee. Carter looked at William Croft. The VP's face was purple with rage. He was looking at his daughter, not Carter. "Daddy, I can explain," Isabella whimpered. "Quiet," William hissed. "Embezzlement," Adeline continued, "using corporate funds for a romantic getaway, while your wife, who, I might add, was listed as your emergency contact, was at home with pneumonia." Adeline leaned forward, her eyes finally drilling into Carter. "You spent $5,000 of my company's money on a weekend fling, Carter. Did you think I wouldn't check the receipts? Did you think the owner of the company wouldn't notice when her own husband was stealing from her?" I intended to pay it back," Carter stammered, sweat pouring down his face. "It was a loan, a temporary loan." "It was theft," Adeline corrected. "But we aren't done." The slide changed again. This time it showed a series of emails. "Exhibit C," Adeline said. "Corporate espionage." Carter frowned. I never sold secrets." "No," Adeline said. "You didn't. You're not smart enough to sell secrets, Carter. But your girlfriend is." She pointed the laser at Isabella. "Ms. Croft has been forwarding internal memos regarding our Asian expansion to a personal Gmail account. That account is linked to an IP address belonging to Holloway Corp., our direct competitor." Isabella stood up, knocking her chair over. "That's a lie. I never sent them to Holloway. I just sent them to my personal email to work from home." "With a blind carbon copy to the CEO of Holloway?" Adeline asked, raising an eyebrow. "We have the server logs, Isabella. You were trading information for a job offer. You wanted to jump ship before the quarterly review." Adeline turned to William Croft. "William, your daughter is a corporate spy, and Carter Hayes was her unwitting access point. He gave her his passwords because he was too lazy to log in himself." William Croft put his head in his hands. "I resign," he whispered. "I accept full responsibility." "We'll discuss your severance later, William," Adeline said gently. "But first, the trash." She looked at Carter. "Carter Hayes, you are hereby terminated for cause: gross misconduct, embezzlement, and breach of confidentiality. You will receive no severance. You will receive no recommendation. And effective immediately, you are blacklisted from every subsidiary owned by Sterling Global." She paused, letting the weight of the words settle. "That includes the bank that holds your mortgage, the insurance company that covers your car, and the real estate firm you just signed a lease with." Carter stood up, shaking. He felt like a cornered animal. "You can't do this, Adeline. This is personal. You're destroying my life because I left you." "I'm not destroying your life, Carter," Adeline said, closing the folder with a sharp snap. "I'm just taking back the life I gave you. You built your castle on my land. Now, I'm evicting you." She gestured to Tobias. "Get him out of my boardroom. He's dirtying the carpet." Tobias moved fast. He grabbed Carter by the back of his expensive suit jacket and hauled him toward the door. "Wait! Adeline, please!" Carter screamed, his dignity completely gone. "We can work this out. I still love you. It was a mistake. Isabella meant nothing. Adeline!" He was dragged into the hallway. The heavy oak doors slammed shut, cutting off his screams. Inside the boardroom, the silence returned. Adeline took a deep breath. She adjusted her silk cuffs. She looked around the table at the terrified executives. "Now," she said, a small, genuine smile touching her lips for the first time. "Let's discuss the Asian expansion. I believe we have some leaks to plug." Outside in the hallway, Carter Hayes lay on the floor where Tobias had thrown him. The elevator doors opened, and 2 uniformed police officers stepped out. "Carter Hayes," one of them asked, holding up handcuffs. "We have a warrant for your arrest regarding financial fraud." Carter looked at the handcuffs, then at the closed doors of the boardroom. He realized then, with a crushing clarity, that the signature he had smirked at yesterday hadn't been an ending. It had been the beginning of his hell. The slide from the penthouse to the pavement wasn't a sudden drop for Carter Hayes. It was a slow, grinding descent that stripped away his dignity layer by layer, like paint being scraped off a rusted wall. It began with the humiliation of the bail hearing. Carter stood in a holding cell that smelled of bleach and unwashed bodies, wearing his bespoke navy suit that was now wrinkled and stained. When the judge set bail, Carter instinctively reached for his phone to transfer the funds, only to remember his phone had been seized as evidence. He had to call his mother in Ohio, a woman he hadn't spoken to in 3 years because he deemed her too provincial, to beg for the money. She cried, not out of sympathy, but out of shame. The legal battle that followed was a massacre. Adeline didn't just fire him. She unleashed the full weight of the Sterling legal department. They didn't seek jail time with the ferocity he expected. Instead, they sought restitution. They wanted every penny back. Mr. Hayes, his court-appointed lawyer, a tired man named Mr. Henderson, who smelled of stale tobacco, had said during their 3rd meeting. "You have 2 choices. You can go to trial, where they will present the Miami photos, the credit card statements, and the testimony of Ms. Croft, who, by the way, has cut a deal to testify against you, or you can plead no contest, liquidate your assets to pay back the misappropriated funds, and avoid prison." "Isabella turned on me?" Carter asked, staring at the grey wall of the interrogation room. "Miss Croft is young and has a very expensive lawyer paid for by her father," Henderson shrugged. "She claimed you coerced her. She played the victim. You're the predator, Carter." That's the narrative. Carter signed the plea deal. It was the 2nd time in a week he signed a document that ended his life. But this time he didn't smirk. The liquidation was the next circle of hell. Carter watched from the sidewalk as a repossession team loaded his silver Porsche onto a flatbed truck. He watched them carry out his Italian leather furniture, his 85-inch television, and his collection of vintage watches. The bank foreclosed on the condo he had put a deposit on. The credit card companies sued him for the outstanding balances on his maxed-out cards. Within 2 months, Carter Hayes, the man who thought he was a king, was sleeping on a deflated air mattress in a studio apartment in a neighborhood where sirens wailed all night long. But the professional silence was the loudest part. Carter applied to 40 jobs in the first month. He applied to competitors, to boutique firms, even to startups. He had an MBA. He had experience. He was a top earner. But every interview ended the same way. The hiring manager would look at his resume, smile, type his name into a database, and then their face would drop. "I'm sorry, Mr. Hayes," a recruiter at a mid-sized logistics firm told him, sliding his resume back across the desk. "We can't hire you." "Why not?" Carter demanded, his desperation showing. "I can double your sales in a quarter." "You're on the blacklist," the recruiter said, lowering his voice. "Sterling Global flagged you as a high-risk liability for financial fraud. And frankly, no one wants to annoy Adeline Sterling. She's acquiring companies left and right. Hiring her ex-husband, the one who stole from her, is corporate suicide." Carter walked out into the rain, realizing that the useless housewife he had mocked had an arm long enough to strangle his career from across the city. 6 months later, the winter had turned Chicago into a landscape of grey slush and biting wind. Carter pushed a mop across the checkerboard floor of Sal's diner, a 24-hour greasy spoon on the outskirts of the city near the industrial park. The air inside was thick with the smell of burnt bacon and stale coffee. "Hey, Hayes," the manager, a 19-year-old kid named Ricky with a power complex, shouted from the counter. "You missed a spot near the jukebox, and table 6 needs ketchup. Move it." "On it," Carter mumbled, keeping his head down. His hands, once manicured and soft from lotion, were red and chapped, the knuckles split from the harsh cleaning chemicals. His back ached with a constant, dull throb. He wore a uniform that was 2 sizes too big, stained with mustard and grease. He walked over to table 6, clutching 2 plastic bottles of ketchup. The customers were a group of young businessmen in sharp suits, laughing loudly about their quarterly bonuses. "So I told him," one of the men said, adjusting his silk tie, a tie that looked exactly like the one Carter used to wear. "If you want to play in the big leagues, you got to bring the big numbers. We're going to the Kensington tonight to celebrate." Carter felt a physical pang of nausea. The Kensington. That was where he had planned to take Isabella the night he signed the papers. That was his world. He placed the ketchup on the table. "Excuse me," the man said, looking at Carter with mild annoyance. "Can we get some water? And try to bring ice this time." "Yes, sir," Carter said. His voice was raspy. He had lost the smooth, commanding baritone he used to practice in the mirror. As he turned to walk away, he caught his reflection in the dark window. He looked 10 years older. His hairline was receding, his eyes were sunken, and his posture was defeated. He looked like exactly what he was, a man who had lost everything. He retreated behind the counter to refill the water pitcher. Above the register, a small television was mounted on the wall, usually playing sports highlights on mute. Today, it was tuned to the erratic ticker of a financial news network. "Turn that up, Ricky," one of the truck drivers at the counter said. "I got stock in this one." Ricky grabbed the remote and unmuted the TV. "Breaking news from the Global Economic Summit in Davos," the reporter's voice cut through the diner's clatter. "Sterling Global has just announced a record-breaking merger with the Asian tech giant, Kitos Industries. The deal, valued at $40 billion, cements Sterling Global as the dominant superpower in the logistics and tech sector." Carter froze. The water pitcher overflowed, spilling cold water over his hand, but he didn't feel it. "And here," the reporter continued, "is the woman of the hour, the recluse billionaire who stepped into the light and took the world by storm. Adeline Sterling." The camera cut to a live feed. Adeline was standing on a podium in Switzerland. The backdrop was a breathtaking view of the Alps, but she outshone the scenery. She wore a tailored coat of winter white cashmere, her posture regal and imposing. She didn't look like the woman who used to knit on the sofa while Carter watched football. She looked like an empress. Next to her stood a tall, distinguished man with silvering hair, the CEO of Kitos Industries. He was looking at Adeline with evident awe and respect. A forest of microphones was thrust toward her. "Miss Sterling," a reporter yelled. "This merger was deemed impossible 6 months ago. Analysts said Sterling Global was stagnant. How did you turn it around so quickly?" Adeline leaned into the microphone. Her face filled the screen in the diner. Carter stared into her grey eyes, the same eyes that had watched him sign his divorce papers. "I made a choice," Adeline said, her voice clear and melodious, echoing in the silent diner. "I realized that for years I had been operating with a handicap. I was allowing mediocrity to take up space in my life and my company. I was protecting people who didn't deserve protection." She paused, and a small, knowing smile played on her lips. It wasn't a cruel smile, it was worse. It was an indifferent smile. "I learned that you cannot build an empire if you are carrying dead weight," she continued. "So, I cut the anchor. I removed the toxicity from my board and my personal life. And once I was free of that burden, well, the only way was up. "Is there anyone you'd like to thank?" the reporter asked. "Perhaps a partner?" Adeline laughed. It was a genuine, happy sound. "I'd like to thank my past self," she said, "for finally waking up, and for realizing that I didn't need a partner to complete me. I owned the kingdom all along. I just needed to start acting like the queen." The diner erupted in chatter. "That's a dame with a head on her shoulders," the truck driver grunted, biting into his toast. "Sharp, ruthless. I like her. Look at that coat," a woman in a booth sighed. "She looks like she owns the world." Carter stood paralyzed. Dead weight. She wasn't talking about bad investments. She wasn't talking about the SVP of operations. She was talking about him. To the world, he was invisible. To her, he was just an anchor she had cut loose so she could fly. He remembered his last words to her. "I hope you find someone on your level." He looked at Adeline on the screen, shaking hands with world leaders, billionaire CEOs, and royalty. She had found her level. She was in the stratosphere, and then he looked down at his dirty apron. He looked at the mop bucket filled with grey water. He looked at the half-eaten burger someone had left on table 4. He had found his level too. "Hayes!" Ricky screamed, snapping his fingers in front of Carter's face. "The water! You're flooding the floor! Clean it up, or you're docked an hour's pay!" Carter snapped out of his trance. He turned off the faucet. He grabbed a rag. He knelt on the hard, dirty tiles of the diner floor, right there in front of everyone, and began to wipe up the spill. On the screen above him, Adeline Sterling turned and walked away into a future made of gold, never once looking back. Carter scrubbed the floor, the bitter taste of regret in his mouth, knowing he would be scrubbing for a very long time. He had signed the papers. He had wanted freedom. He got it. And that, my friends, is why you never judge a book by its cover. And you certainly never underestimate the person holding the pen. Carter thought he was the king of the world, but he was just a jester in Adeline's court. He signed away $1 billion empire because he was too arrogant to see the worth of the woman sitting right in front of him. What do you think? Did Carter deserve his fate scrubbing grills at a diner? Or was Adeline too harsh in destroying his entire life? I think he got exactly what he ordered. If you enjoyed this story of karma and sweet revenge, make sure to smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Subscribe and hit the bell notification so you never miss a new story. And tell me in the comments, if you were Adeline, would you have warned him, or would you have let him sign his own doom? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.